Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with.
Nerdarchy Ted.
It's time to delve back into Dark Sun and why 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons needs it. This time we're talking about divine magic.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So we're trekking through Athas, the Burning Sands once again, and this time we're going to be talking about divine magic, the gods, and
or the lack thereof.
or the lack thereof, and how to be a cleric in Dark Sun.
All right, so Athas is a brutal world, and so much so the gods have actually, fleed. They're non-existent.
Well, I believe it's actually considered a closed cosmology. So there's not really a way in or out.
Right.
Where the other prime material planes are. So literally the gods could still be be there, but they can't access Athas. Athas
Right.
can't access them. We don't actually know. But it's worth mentioning there are no gods for all intents and purposes, sort of, because there is one place where divine magic comes from, and it might be different for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons because we have a new character class option.
Right. So in the previous editions of Dark Sun, where we actually had rules, there was a class called the Templar, and this was a conduit through the Sorcerer Kings, allowing them to actually get access to divine magic. But we don't have Templars in 5th edition, and we'll get into more about what Templars and their sources of power, the Sorcerer Kings, during that specific video when that comes in the future.
Right, but so for now we're going to go, okay, well, what is there to talk about? You just told us there's no gods, essentially no divine magic, and there's these Sorcerer Kings that you're not going to talk about in this video.
Well, should someone decide to pay homage and thus worship, a character can actually draw divine magical energy from the elements.
Yes, the elemental planes is it is one of the things that does flow to Athas, or at least that's where these clerics get their magic from anyway.
Right. So you've got the main four: earth, air, fire, water, as everybody who plays this game knows about. Well, if you're going to be a priest, you want to be a cleric, this is where it's coming from. So I would think that if in order for this to exist in Dungeons and Dragons, you would need to have earth, air, fire, and water as your domains. Now, in one of the Unearthed Arcana, we've got stone, so that could kind of loosely be, construed as earth, or you could literally just, okay, well, we've got stone, but we're going to make specific earth.
Right. So a little bit of work there, not that much, not that big of a deal. So earth and fire are probably, and air are fairly common elements in Dark Sun. The water is a bit problematic because there isn't much of it. It's super precious. Now, this also might be this one actually may be a good reason to worship it, but the other three are just far more prevalent.
Right. And, it is worth noting that in the actual, 2nd edition books that we're drawing our inspiration from, there was para-elemental clerics, and it says that typically they are better suited as NPCs because they're just so much less known.
Right, they're a little bit rare, and so we have, what do we have? We have sun, we have magma, we have silt,
and we have rain.
Again, same. It doesn't rain very much in Athas, and silt makes a bit more sense to me because you have the Silt Sea in Athas, and basically they would sail ships across this thing. They had problems with giants walking through it and coming to attack other places, and they would also have different monsters in there. But it was actually an important part of the world of Athas. It was their version of sailing.
Right.
So I could definitely see, a silt priest out of all the para-elemental priests, even the regular elemental priests too, being very prevalent because, the Silt Sea happens. If you're a sailor on that and you happen to be religious, why not worship that thing that is keeping you alive or it could kill you?
And along the same lines, though, I would say that someone who wanted to worship the sun would probably be just as likely because it is ever present.
That's true. So of those four, the two that seem unlikely are rain because there's a good possibility you've never seen rain before, and magma is also kind of like one of those things as well. It's not everywhere.
Yeah, you actually have more volcanoes in a regular world than you do in Athas.
So that being said, there's like a unique role playing aspect to becoming a priest of the elements.
And you want to, what makes that much more unique?
Well, they do this weird thing. Like if you're a priest of Earth, you might do this thing where you inter yourself in the Earth, and if the Earth accepts you, you'll survive and be able to dig your way out. If it's air, you might jump off of a cliff, and if you don't die, the air has accepted you.
So essentially, the way it works is you have to actually give yourself as an adept or an apprentice. You give yourself to the elements, and if the elements decide that you are worthy, they save your life.
Yes, essentially that is
So
it.
I actually had an air priest, when I played this, back in the day, and he did exactly that. As his apprenticeship, he jumped off a cliff, and he didn't fall to his death. The winds caught him, or the air caught him, and carried him safely to the ground, and that's how he became an air priest.
Yeah, so the other two, obviously water, you'd have to try and drown yourself. The tough part would be finding the water, and it'd also be kind of sacrilegious to other people that you're actually wasting water by defiling it by putting yourself in it. And then fire, I guess that would probably be self-immolation.
Probably, it's like I'm gonna walk into this fire and see what happens.
Now the para-elementals would be a little bit trickier, but and that's all role playing stuff, and it is cool flavor things that you had in Athas in the Dark Sun novels and also the campaign setting.
Now, the great thing about elemental priests is they're unlike the typical clerics of other worlds. You're going to still worship with the same fervor that a cleric typically does, and if you were to carry over the concept into fifth edition, or carry the concept of fifth edition clerics into Dark Sun, you could still have the reluctant cleric. Something happened, you mistakenly went through a trial and survived, and now you've bestowed this power, or this power's been bestowed upon you.
It almost seems more likely in Athos.
It's possible, but at the same time, while they've saved your life to give you this power, it's like the rest of the world. It's a kind of a one-way connection. So you're not really knowing what your element would really want, other than, all right, I love the earth. It does for me, yada yada yada.
You have power without actually kind of being beholden to it.
Right.
So that is an interesting thing. Also, one of the interesting things too to keep in mind is in the novels, in the books, like when I know there was a fire priest. I remember a fire priest, and whenever he would heal, he would like burn them. Like there would be intense pain associated with the burning sensation with the healing. So the healing kind of came at a price.
Right.
Which seems really apropos for Dark Sun.
Sometimes you just, if you want to flavor things a little bit more, that's a way to actually go about doing it.
Absolutely. And also, a lot of times we get questions on, like, how would you do a deity-less world and still have clerics and paladins? May I introduce you to Dark Sun?
Yeah, so a paladin in 5th edition is literally just, a conduit of an ideal. And that's all it is. You don't necessarily need to have a deity that you worship. So there aren't really paladins in Dark Sun. It's just not that kind of a place. But should you decide you want to play that kind of thing, that's where they're drawing their power from. Literally just this concept. And divine magic still works.
Right, and there's no reason why you couldn't flavor that paladin with the elements.
Right.
You could build your oath around a particular element and those tenets, and it would work just fine. And then maybe even your GM might change your smite damage instead of being radiant, maybe it's something else.
Right.
So there's definitely ways to play with that and work with it. But the question is, do you guys want 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to have Dark Sun for you to play in? We got a place for that in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on Facebook.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.